Welcome to the Phoenix Path podcast. I'm your host, Maddie B. I am so thrilled and grateful to bring Katie Newman to you today. Katie is a force of nature, a force to be reckoned with. I met Katie about 7 years ago. She was a little intimidating, but we went on to become good friends. She has been in recovery from drugs and alcohol since 2012. She is a loving wife and mom to two beautiful children. She started her own business in sobriety, and then a couple of years ago started a second business where she now leads women in building their own empires and successful businesses. She is a leader in the youth at her for the youth at her church, and also sings in the choir. Katie, you're incredibly busy. Thank you for joining us today and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So
Well,
excited.
and I know you're busy and have a lot on your plate. What are your plans today? What are you actually doing?
Oh my gosh. Well, I went and had coffee with some girlfriends, actually two girls that I've never met. So that was kind of fun. And then I'm going to hang out with my mom, which, is a whole other thing. So we're going to go grocery shopping and just hang out for a little bit.
Oh, it sounds like a lovely Friday.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I'm so grateful to have you here today. And, before we dive into your transformation, which, obviously I know your history from knowing you and over the years I've heard you share about, your childhood and growing up. And, can you give us just a little background for the listeners? Like, what was it like before? Like, what was it like growing up, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah. I think it's really important because it's so easy, I think, especially when you're getting sober, to think about all the horrible things that happen. So I do want to make it very clear that I do love my parents very much and they love me very much. And I believe now that they did the best that they could with what they had, which wasn't much. But I don't ever want it to come across that I had horrible parents. I just think both of my parents had a lot of demons that they never dealt with. And unfortunately, it created severe trauma for me and my brother. So, with that being said, I come from two parents, and both of them struggle with many different things. My dad is an addict, has been an addict my whole life, and my mom has addictions and other things besides drugs and alcohol. And they were divorced by the age of 6. But before that, I just grew up in a house where a lot of times we would go to other people's houses. Like my dad would take us to other women's houses, and me and my brother would sit in the living room while they did whatever. And then my mom would do the same. And I didn't know at that time that they were having affairs. I just knew that, one, I wasn't allowed to say anything, and two, I didn't think it was quite normal, but I didn't know. So from a very early age, keeping secrets and making sure that everybody else around me was okay was at the top of my priority list. And that just led down a whole crazy path.
Yeah. Yeah, that early, I feel exactly the same way. I love my mum and dad dearly. And, I think we all do, even as a parent now, we all do the best we can with what we have. And, being in recovery, myself, and thinking about the impact that it, possibly had on McLean. But you talked about the secret keeping. And I know, with recovery, there's that learning to be rigorously honest. So going back to when you chose to get sober, or you were kind of driven to your knees and, had that point of really choosing sobriety, getting honest with yourself, like how did that unfold, and what happened, to get you to where you were
Mm.
willing to look into the mirror?
Well, it's hard. It's really, really hard. For me, I'll back up a little bit. So I've been sober. It'll be 13 years this month, which I can't even grasp that sometimes. But before that, this is not my first time trying to get sober. And I was in recovery, and a really good close friend of mine passed away. And I realized pretty quickly that I didn't really have a whole lot of tools to deal with it. And that doesn't, that I don't ever like to blame my addiction on something, but when you when you have all these patterns and these habits that you do, you just resort back to them. And so I was getting high and drinking while going to meetings and while sponsoring women and while dating my now husband and keeping it a secret and
Yeah.
nobody knew. And I was doing it for a little over a year.
I
And then,
don't know you, gosh, I don't know how you manage that, but that's,
well,
it's
when you grow up in a household
yeah,
where you be 20 different people at once, it was natural to me to just hide it. Like I could compartmentalize so well that what you see, you would never know. And that's the scariest part to me about addiction for
yeah,
me personally is the I can make you believe whatever I want you to believe. And that is terrifying. Like
yeah,
that is terrifying. And so when my sponsor at the time, I think my behaviors were becoming a little questionable. And she reached out to me one night and she was like, listen, I don't really know what's going on with you, but I'd like to get together with you and, you know, give you a drug test or take you to a mental hospital because one of the two are happening. You're either getting loaded and not telling anybody, or you're having a mental breakdown. And I was like, I'm definitely having a mental breakdown
yeah,
because I didn't want to tell anybody what was happening.
yeah.
I went to her house. She drug tested me. I failed. Of course I
Of
failed.
course, yeah,
Of
of course.
course I failed.
Yeah,
And I failed for all the things. Cocaine and crack were my drug of choice. And
yeah.
I tried to tell her that I ate a bagel with cocaine on it.
Oh
Like,
my God.
what?
That's what we do.
It's
That's
what
what
we
we do.
do.
Yeah,
And so it just all unraveled, but she kept me there for about 4 hours and she was like, I do not care if you're getting high. I care if you can just tell one person
the
the
truth.
truth. And I
Yeah,
was like, I'm getting high and I don't think I want to stop.
yeah,
And I don't know what happened to me in that moment, but it was like the first time in my life that like someone was inside.
yeah,
And
yeah,
then it just wasn't as fun anymore then. It was
yeah,
damn. Now
yeah.
she knows, and now it's get ready to implode, and I know it.
hmm It's a really, it's a really weird thing that's, that part where you said, getting honest, the fact that you were honest about, I'm getting high and I don't think I want to stop.
Yeah,
It's like it opens some kind of floodgate, where I think, definitely for me, my higher power comes in at that
yeah,
point.
yeah,
Just that honesty, I felt like there was access to relief. There was
yeah,
such an enormous relief in getting honest. And then I think there's something in hearing yourself say it out loud.
yeah,
Like there's a separation between, the addictive mind saying that and your own spirit hearing it
yeah,
and
ab-
it not being your path. And like that inner knowing that, you deserve more than this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And the timing of it as well. I think the timing, having that year, all of that experience, all of, the pain that we go through. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how that has transformed you, how, because they say, I know pain is the touchstone of change.
Yeah.
And, a little bit, with regards to sort of the Phoenix path and the reason that this podcast is called that, the Phoenix will build its own nest and set it on fire. So, and then, but it rises stronger. And
Yeah.
that was kind of the reason for the name of the podcast. And of course, I know we're talking to the woman that we once were, as well as anybody that's really on a healing journey. I think we're all in recovery at some level. But the pain that you went through, what were the times and where were the moments where it really changed you on, like a cellular level?
Um, it's it's hard to say. I think when I finally got honest, I knew that it was going to require me to get honest with Joe, my husband,
Yeah.
then it was going to have require me to get honest with all of my friends. And there's just something so devastating about that.
Hmm.
Um, because they get to actually see you for who you really are. And that has always been, I've always struggled with not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy enough and not feeling pretty enough and not feeling whatever enough. And if I could make you believe something and you loved that version, then
Hmm.
that meant I was okay. So
Yeah.
this required me to show you that I am so broken that I probably couldn't even tell you what my favorite color was.
Mm.
Um, and that it was excruciating. I mean, it was excruciating. One, because they're hurt and I don't want to hurt people,
Hmm.
but also like, well, are you still going to love me?
Yes.
Are you still going to want to be my friend? Are you still going to think I'm worthy? Because who am I going to be if I don't have you? Who am
Hmm.
I going to be if I don't have my addiction? And who am I going to be if I'm just left all alone with just broken?
Yeah.
That is like, that is rock bottom to me. Like, and I've had worse bottoms than when I got sober, way worse. But that emptiness that I felt, like just straight up, like nothing was inside of me anymore. I, oof, I don't wish that on my worst enemy.
No. No. And I'm sure those people, I mean, just in my experience, that humility, it's that fear of what will people think, and then, coming clean, literally and figuratively, with the people that we love in our life. And, takes a tremendous amount of courage,
Yeah.
like you're talking about, will they still love me? I've let them down in this way or that way. But it's amazing how most people in our lives just want us to be well. And I think those fears and ways that we see ourselves, I think really our loved ones see beyond that, even
Yeah.
before we get, and just want that for us. Um, so so tell me a little bit, when you got to, you came into the program, you didn't get sober at that point. So what happened in 2012 that was obviously the catalyst in getting honest with everybody? And what happened after that? What was your like, how did the healing, journey begin? And what does that look like? Not just in a program of recovery, but all the way around, like mind, body, and spirit. I know you've done so much work and have had such an amazing transformation. Started a business, got married to Joe, had children, but your own healing and sort of in the beginning at 2012, after going through that time of honesty, how did it look after that?
Well, I had to find, well, first and foremost, like, I mean, I went to as many recovery meetings as I could possibly go to because for me, it was so important for me to be around people who could understand. Because if there is one thing I cannot stand is a hypocrite,
Yeah.
number one. And two, I can't, I'm happy to talk about my story with people, but if you've never walked it and you've never been through it, I cannot hear advice from you. Like I can't. And so I needed to be around people who knew the depths that I was willing to go to get high. And I needed people to show me how to go to any depth to get sober. And
Yeah.
I did that. And for me, I had to be so honest that it was ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
I had to tell on myself for every single thing because
I remember that. Yeah.
I remember because like I got sober, but I used to be a big klepto. Like I love to steal stuff. And so like, I remember walking into an AA meeting and was like, I just stole toothpaste. I didn't really need to steal the toothpaste because I have the money for the toothpaste, but I really wanted to steal the toothpaste. And it's like, I had to be honest about that. I had to be honest about the thoughts that I was having. Like, all the shame and the lies that go on in your head as an addict, it's like I needed to get that out because if not, left to my own devices, I am going to get high.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I had to tell somebody
Hmm.
what was happening. That was a big thing. And then another big thing, I mean, for me, I had to deal with my childhood.
Yeah.
I had to go to major therapy and I did trauma therapy. I did something called EMDR.
Yes, I've done that. Hmm.
And it just helped rewire some of my brain for me. And I had to do that on my childhood. And I needed to be able to connect with little Katie
Hmm.
in a way that no one ever did or ever tried. And I needed to show up for her.
Hmm.
And my life changed after that because that little girl needed protection and she didn't have it. And so I had to deal with my childhood. That was a huge, huge, huge piece.
Yeah, I hear, I've seen a lot of kind of the quotes about, being your own loving parent and being the person for yourself that you needed as a child.
Yeah.
Um, and learning to have fun and like play and have fun in sobriety. The connection that you talked about, having a community, all of those things, and the rigorous honesty and being honest and telling on yourself with your thoughts and your words and your deeds. And in the beginning, I remember I would just tell everybody everything. But that's been an area of growth where, I do have a little bit more discernment today. I don't know about you, but there is, you do get to a point where it's not, you kind of develop that inner circle and that close, those close people that you tell, you do still do that with. You tell them absolutely, everything because even in recovery, the thoughts cross our mind. It's not, not terrible thoughts or not thoughts to harm or steal or whatever, but I think emotional sobriety is where it goes to. Um, so the emotional sobriety, that's kind of the final frontier, isn't it?
Hmm.
Becoming sort of grounded and speaking up and having boundaries and learning to show up authentically. And so, how did that unfold for you? Are you, the journey of kind of getting past those first days of hanging on and, then moving into the emotional sobriety? I hear a lot that it's like 5 to 6 years before. I
Feels
mean,
like,
sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. I think some
yeah.
people, depending on what went on beforehand. But yeah, what's emotional sobriety look like for you today? And when did that kick in?
Oh my gosh. I think it started, I mean, probably around, I'd say year 3 or 4, only because when I decided to get sober this time, I really decided to like go all in and really start dealing with my stuff. Um, but it's, I mean, for me, it's learning how to set boundaries with people, especially my family. I mean, my dad and I started getting high together when I was 10. So when I got sober, he was still using. And when I got married, he was still using. When I started having kids, he was still using. And I had to take years away from him because I was no longer willing to show up to that crazy chaos that affected me in ways I will never truly be able to explain. And then I had to set boundaries with my mom and tell her what I'm available for and what I'm not, and what I'm willing to battle about and what I'm not. And then with Joe, like, he walked through that relapse with me. He had no idea. He was the person I lied to more than anybody. So, imagine like how I would be if the roles were reversed. Like I would be controlling and crazy, and how we are, like, especially when you're dealing with addiction and you're the loved one, you're just as crazy as the person getting high. So like
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot he had to work through too, but I had to also like be able to say like, I love you and I appreciate your concern, but this is what I'm willing to be treated like.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I started to change and I started to grow, and I wasn't the girl who was getting high anymore, but sometimes I was being treated like I still was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I'm sorry, but that girl isn't here anymore and I'm not willing to settle for that anymore. So like that had to change.
Mm-hmm.
Um how I presented myself in public had to change. I mean, like how I dressed changed. How I responded to male attention had to change. Like, I mean, there were so many things that I had to change because I had no boundaries with nobody. If you wanted
Mm-hmm.
to get it, if you had something I wanted, I was going to take it. If you, like, I mean, there was just so many different areas where like I'm like, okay, who do I want to be
Hmm.
in this situation? And it needed to match every other situation too. I needed to be one person. One
Hmm.
person.
Yeah. No, I completely can relate to you. And, you know, we get to it's like I said before, it's a courageous journey, but and it's hard in the beginning and it's ups and downs and but it's also incredibly exciting, you know, and to get to choose, to get to feel your way around being aligned and that changing, you know, as you're growing as a person and you're starting to feel some self-esteem and some self-respect and time's going by. And I know like being of service kind of laid this foundation of self-worth that I had no idea was going to be the case. I mean, I would help most, you know, if I was helpful, I was a helpful human, I would help anyone. But helping another alcoholic or addict has given, you know, starts to give you that access to that alignment and that self-esteem and self-worth. And all of a sudden, you know, this person or that person coming at you in a certain way or treating you in a certain way, you are like, hang on a minute. I'm not that person. And you know, they say a lot of the time people see it before we see it ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Um, and you have absolutely, I mean, I obviously, like I said, I met you 7 years ago, and you went on to very, very quickly go back to school and start your, this is the first business we're talking about. So you went back to school really quickly, I believe, and started your own business. And then was it 2 years ago?
Three,
Started 3 years
three.
ago, started an additional business. So the exciting things that you've gotten to do in sobriety and starting your own business in early sobriety, what was that like? That's I can't imagine that personally. That was incredible to watch you do.
Well, I mean, it took a while. So, like, I was in, when I got sober this time, I was in hair school. And so I decided, when I knew I wanted to be in like a high end salon because I wanted that experience and that education. And so I did that, and 2020 hit. And at that time, I mean, I was like 9 years, 8 years, 9 years sober. I don't even know. But the whole world obviously erupted and things
Yeah.
changed. Pregnant with my second baby, and I went back to that salon, and just it was one of those times in my life where emotional sobriety kicked in again, and it was like, wow, I deserve more.
Yeah.
I do not get paid enough. I have put myself out there and done everything that I've been asked to do on how to get a raise times 1,000, and I still wasn't being treated the way I knew in my soul that I deserved. And I went to my husband. I was like, I want to go open my own little studio. And he was like, go for it. And I'm like, okay. And it was scary, dude. But it's like faith over fear. That's been my big thing getting sober. It's like God has not dropped me this far to
Yeah.
just leave me here. Like, obviously my conscience and my intuition and the things that I'm feeling, I'm having those feelings for a reason, and I never listened to that as a child. So now as an adult, I'm like, no, I'm going to listen to myself when something doesn't feel right or when I know I'm capable of more. And I just go for it now. Now it's like, oh God, if I fall on my face, well, I guess I'll fall on my face.
Right, absolutely. And when you've been through that journey of such like humility, you know, there's, and you've been through a lot of pain and trauma. As long as as long as we're not sort of drinking and using everything else, it's like,
Yeah.
there's nothing that can really hit that hard. But you talked about your faith and, following that guidance and your God and your God conscience today. And I know from my experience that over the years, there's times, early on where, I didn't tune, I kind of wasn't as connected to that. And then as time's gone on and I've made choices, um, from that place, and then seeing the evidence of the blessings that come from it. And then over time, one choice after another, and the evidence and the evidence and the evidence that that's the alignment, that's the path I need to follow. Again, that's exciting, but in learning to trust yourself
Yeah.
which is huge because we couldn't trust our, I mean, I couldn't trust myself. I didn't even know myself, let alone know how to trust myself.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about that, your relationship with your higher power and how that's grown and what that looks like for you today.
I grew up in a household where we went to church, but there was just so much hypocrisy that it was hard for me to trust that God wasn't going to like punish me for all the things that I had done. And so when I got sober this time, I always believed in God. I never didn't believe. And I always knew that He had saved me from a lot of things. Like that was never in question. One, because I was still alive. Two, I hadn't been killed. Three, like there was just so many different things that could have happened to me. Um, so I always believed, but when I got sober this time, my sponsor at the time, she was like, I want you to, write a letter to a parent, but pick the parent that you think would remind you the most of God. Well, I mean, that's really hard to say, but it's like, okay, so I picked my mom because she was more of the disciplinarian. And to me, that was God. He disciplines you. Like that's the relationship that I had always thought was there. And so I wrote her a letter and she was like, I want you to write her all of the beautiful things that you wish for her. And I was like, okay. And so it was like, Dear Mom, I wish you knew how much I loved you. I wish you knew that you didn't have to use men for love. And I wish you knew that money wasn't going to bring you happiness. And like all the things that I really did wish for her, nothing hurtful. And so she took the letter from me and she crossed out Dear Mom and wrote Dear Katie. And then at the
Oh my gosh.
said love God. And in that moment, like I broke down because it was like, maybe that's what God actually thinks about me. Maybe He does just want me to be His loving child. Maybe I'm perfect, whole, and complete, but just went down the wrong path at some point. And so that opened me to start changing my perception. Because
Mm,
that's the thing about it is the same with sobriety, the same with addiction, the same with relationships, the same with God. Like our perceptions of things are not accurate. And if you're not open to at least saying you might be wrong,
mhm.
you don't stand a chance.
No, you
And
don't.
so I had to say like, oh, I might be wrong. And that just opened up a whole thing. And then I just started talking to him. I mean, I cussed him out. I mean, there was a night where it was pouring down rain, and me and Joe had gotten into one of our fits. And I remember like getting in my car and I was soaking wet and I was gripping the steering wheel. I mean, like as hard as I could. And I was like, I'm going to get high if you don't do something. And like, really just, and the
Really?
next thing you
Mm,
know, a girl I was sponsoring calls me and she was like, I really want to drink. And I'm
yeah.
like, it's one of those things where I think a lot of times people think that God is just going to pick you up and get you sober. It's like, no, God's going to give you exactly what you need in that moment. And I needed to be brought back into reality to help her so that I could stay sober. And it was
Yeah.
like, there's just been so many things like that that have just continued to grow my relationship with him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I've never heard of that process. It's like as you were talking, I was like, oh my gosh, write that down. I
Yeah.
need to do that. I need to do that. And I think, that I can again relate because I felt when I came in that there was so much shame and, ultimately I was being punished. But I agree with you that, there was so many times where I was kept alive and thank goodness my daughter was okay and there wasn't a huge impact there and I had made it into recovery and what do they say? Faith without works is dead. And I had to meet God halfway.
Yeah.
I have to meet him, halfway. Like you said, he's not just going to scoop me out of my circumstances. I've got to maybe listen to that inner voice and take the next right step.
Yeah.
Even when I cannot see and it looks bleak.
Yeah.
And in the early days, like you said, having the community around you to share that evidence that they have that just do the next right thing.
Yeah.
Just do the next right thing and a way will appear. And you're like, I don't know about
Yeah.
this. I'm really stressed. It doesn't look good. And then all of a sudden, boom,
Yeah.
something comes in that's the next um, kind of blessing. So, rebuilding your life and obviously being in recovery, there's so much you've already shared with that. Let's talk about becoming a leader. Like you've moved from all that shame and and the trauma and the shame and coming through and the trauma therapy and the program of recovery and building a community and having self-esteem built. And then becoming a leader, like stepping into that,
Yeah.
that is, I mean, I will say, even when, whether you saw it or not in yourself, when I met you 7 years ago, I mean, it was blatant to me that you're a leader, you're not a follower. But stepping in, I was like, I'm going to follow her. But stepping into that and in business, like, what's the reality of that? What's the reality of being in leadership in your life today?
I think it's important for people to know that just because I am leading people doesn't mean that I don't still fear that I'm not. Or it doesn't mean that I don't still struggle with, am I doing enough? Am I enough? Like, I think it's important because I'm still human and I still
Yeah.
have those human feelings. And there's still, like, I don't care how long I've been sober or how close I am with God. Like, I think there will always be that little demon that wants me to fail and that will push on where I'm most vulnerable. And that is, am I enough? And so I still have those things. But I've just really, I think maybe just from beating my head against the wall 700 times or not following through, and then the shame of not following through, it's like, okay, like I can't, and I say this all the time, like I can't think my way into good acting. I have to act my way into good thinking. So I just show up and do it. I'll show up and do it, even when I feel like I'm going to suck, even when I feel like I'm not going to be able to complete it, even when I feel like no one's ever going to want to be on my team or follow me. It's like, we're just going to show up anyway. We're just going to
Yeah.
do it. Because if you don't, you're going to have more regret and more shame of not doing it
Hmm.
than you would if you did. And I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I
Yeah.
know, like, I'm a lot. Yo, I'm a lot. I am a lot of a person, a lot of a woman, a lot of emotion, and I am not for everybody. But I'm not supposed to be,
No, you're not. No.
right? So
Yeah.
just do it anyway. Do it
Yeah.
scared. Do it scared.
I saw some of your, I love your social media and, um, it really is this kind of beautiful daily diary.
Yeah.
You're so vulnerable on there. And, sometimes there'll be times when you're kind of singing and driving in the sunshine and the windows open, and I see like the joy and you're singing, or other times you're posting a picture of you on stage where you've been asked to speak
Yeah.
and, share your story. Um, does that take a lot of courage for you, or are you just kind of freeing out there with that? Like, does that take, because that's
Both. I think
scary. That's
both.
scary.
I think it's both. It's still terrifying. Like there's still, I mean, it's still scary because there is still such a crazy stigma about addiction. And there's still so many people that it's so hush hush and it's dark. And so I think my sole purpose is to seriously bring light into it. So I
Yeah.
try to come at it with that thought process. It's like, this is nothing to feel shame about. This is like, there are so many people struggling right now that need people that they can relate to. I know I did. I mean, my God, I needed to know, like, I needed to know that, you had sex for drugs. I needed to know that. I needed to know that I wasn't the only one. I
Mhm.
needed to know that, you know what? You were abused. I need to know that. Like, so
Mhm.
I do it scared. I do it scared. And then there are those moments where I'm so free and I'm so feeling myself and like that confidence is like no one, I could run through a brick wall.
Yeah.
I wish those were every day.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah. I
not,
hear
but
you.
like there are those moments. And I think for me and how I look at it, I was like, it's just those glimmers of like gifts from God. Like, you're on the right path, Katie.
Yeah.
Here's the moment to feel free. Take
Mhm.
it, or you know what? Or I'll get messages like I get these feelings of, you know what? It's not time for you to share that part yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it
And
maybe one day, but not yet.
yeah.
Don't do
And
it yet.
it's following that, which obviously you've developed into this incredibly strong relationship with God and your intuition. And like you said, it's so, by being liberated, you liberate others.
Yeah.
And that, being so honest and so open on social media you probably have no idea how many people and women you're impacting every day. I haven't even looked to see, how many followers you have, but I'm sure it's unbelievable. And um, so with that, and like you talk about talking about your social media, I know from what I've seen lately, you've kind of gone down the fitness road and to
Mhm.
kind of work on your fitness and endurance and just your physicality to feel well and like you're in your best. What's that looked like? Has that been its own healing journey? What's that look like?
Ooh, well, I mean, you can relate to this,
I can, yeah.
Uh, like my relationship with food and my body image has been a challenge my whole life. And I don't think I ever really knew it until a couple of years ago. I grew up in a house where my dad, we were getting high very young, and he kept a lot of Playboy magazines around, and I would look at them. And, he never said, I want you to look like this, but that's what he liked.
Yeah.
And so as a kid,
Yeah.
you want, at least for me, I wanted to be what my daddy wanted.
Yes, I
And
don't
so
understand that.
I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so that means I need to be like bleach blonde, skinny as a rail, flat stomach, big boobs, and so cocaine was it kept me skinny for a long time. And so I just that started that. And then, after getting pregnant, I did not take care of myself the way I probably should have. I have no shame about that anymore because it's like, you know what? I made two beautiful babies and it's fine.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it has been very hard for me and my body to bounce back. And I'm one of those people, just like with alcoholism and drug addiction, when I don't get the results that I want, when I want them, I say, fuck it. And I'm going to eat the whole house out.
Right.
Or I'm going to starve myself because
Yeah.
I need to punish myself for not taking care of myself.
Mhm.
And then I still don't get the results that I'm looking for because my body is like, okay, she's trying to kill me. So I'm going to hold on to
Gone
all
through it.
stuff.
100%.
And it's like, I've just really struggled, especially, I think 2020 did a number on people having to stay home. The
100%.
anxiety of getting back into the gym again
Hmm.
was weird. Like, I always loved to work out, but things just got weird. And so I guess November 18th, my husband and I decided like we both weighed ourselves, and it's not about the number on the scale. And
Yeah.
that's a process for me. Okay. Like that's a whole process, but we just got sick of ourselves. Does that make sense? Like I
Yes.
think I hit the bottom with that, just like I had to hit a bottom with my addiction. I was using food as a way to either feel better or punish myself. And I did the same things with drugs and alcohol.
Mhm.
And so I found a gym that meets me exactly where I am, who's willing to help me with my nutrition. And it's so crazy because I met with them last week and they're like, you're under eating and
Mhm.
you're not going to get the results that way. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I know, but my head tells me that carbs are bad. My
100%.
head tells me that if I eat a piece of bread, that I've screwed up my whole day.
Mhm.
So therefore, I'm just going to go overeat now because what's the point?
Mhm.
And they're like, it's definitely retraining my head, and my relationship with food
Yeah.
is changing, but it is hard. It's hard.
Yeah, the CrossFit, we're all or nothing. That's how we're
Yeah.
built.
Yes.
And, the forms of, addiction or essentially what for me I call self-attack. It really is a way to hurt myself.
Yeah.
And just like with, drugs and alcohol, I can do that with anything. Yeah, I can do it with relationships. I can do it with food. I can do it with over exercising. I can do it with under eating. I mean, you name it.
Yep.
And so one of the biggest places that I think, is the growth for me in that specific area has been finding some self-compassion,
Mm-hmm.
just something that was alien to me. And I too had this idea a long time ago. Somebody mentioned a low number of calories. And I heard that and I kept that for years and years and years and was eating probably half of what my body needs to function.
Yep.
And I hit my own bottom with that during COVID. I went on an extremely restrictive diet, lost a lot of weight. My hair was falling out, and then actually had, a crash really emotionally and mentally because of it. There were some good things that came out of that. I did go and sort of get a 10-day treatment that really helped. So that's been, a huge journey. And I entered a program of recovery within that area, which has been life changing because one of the biggest things I saw about drug and alcohol addiction was the selfish and self-centeredness of not being able to be present for other people and
Yeah.
not being present for events, for birthday parties, for celebrations of other people. I was always, thinking about when I was going to have the next drink or the next whatever. And I found when I looked at my food and exercising and all of that, it was the same thing, just different,
Yep.
different day. And I would go out for dinner, but I would be scanning the menu for the number of calories. I wouldn't be present with the people I was with. So I actually today, as part of my sobriety in that area, I do not weigh myself. It's part of my sobriety. It's none of my business. I don't count calories. I have a dietitian that is really sort of helped me with the accountability of really eating enough.
Yeah.
And learning about what my body and brain need, a certain amount of fat. I mean, I don't weigh and measure either, but um, you know, some avocado and a decent amount of it because my brain is,
Your
I think
brain, it's your
my
brain.
brain, my
Women's brain
brain,
need fats.
fats.
Oh,
Yeah, our whole
learning.
system. Yeah, our whole system. And our body can't produce serotonin without without complex carbohydrate. If anyone's listening to this, which I think they will be, don't quote me on this scientific information, but I was told that, and I believe it. I do believe that, we need carbohydrates, I know, for our brain. So there is that. And so, we can really do a number on ourselves. And then we're not showing up for our children. We're not showing up for our friends. We're not showing up for ourselves, which, we deserve today,
Yeah.
and coming to that realization. So I'm so excited, and you're so liberating, and to see you sharing that journey on social media as well,
Yeah.
just really, really made me smile. I know you're covering a lot of different bases for a lot of women and men, I'm sure. I mean, men and women. Um, so if you could sit down with the version of yourself who is still struggling with addiction, what would you tell her today?
Don't give up.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
give um and don't ever lose hope. And don't get up. Don't give up. And you have to start. Just start.
Mhm.
Just go to that first meeting or go to that first therapy session or hit your knees and pray that first prayer or go take that bottle and pour it down the drain or take that bag of whatever it is or don't throw up today
Yeah.
or don't starve yourself today or
Hmm.
for breakfast or
Just for
for
today.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally like
Yeah.
one step in the right direction.
Yeah. No, that's really powerful. And like you said, it's like that just for today. Just hang on for today.
Yeah.
And so, with regards to like your daily practices and, what do you do at each morning, to get yourself kind of grounded and ready for the day? What prep do you do
Yeah.
for yourself and your spirit and your mind?
Well, I mean, I pray before I even get out of the bed because for me it's just what I've had to do. And I pray pretty much the same thing every single day. Please help me get through the day. Please help me stay sober. And please never, ever, ever let me forget what it was like. That's been that
Mm.
way forever. And then I ice roll my face. I don't know why, but it just like opens my everything. It's
Hang on
cold.
a minute. Ice roll.
Ice roll my face. Like
What does that mean?
I have this face roller that I keep in the freezer and I take it out every morning. I just roll my face. It's like my one self-care thing that I'm like, okay, we're just gonna roll my face. It helps with like puffiness, and you know how I am about my glamour. So
Oh
it's like,
my gosh, I'm gonna get an ice roller. I love that.
and then exercise. I mean, now it's like making sure that I get some type of movement that is healthy,
Hmm.
not overdone.
Hmm.
I drink a lot of water now, so definitely have something to drink and eat, and you know, and then just I reach out to other women who, you know, so it's kind of like my same thing every day. I try to stay connected with as many people as possible, and just yeah,
Yeah. No, the ice roller, I mean, all of that and like the connection with, people every day and but that ice roller sounds, I've heard people talk about sticking their head in an ice
yeah,
like a jug of ice water, which I guess kind of the roller sounds a lot nicer. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah, I think I'll get that. And so, what's next for you? Like any new dreams, goals, or projects on the horizon?
Well, it's funny because it's funny. I went to a retreat a few months ago and we were talking about our goals for the next 5 years and something that I've been praying a lot about and just feel God on my heart. It's like I know that I need to be sharing my story and that's why I've started. Like I feel very called to do that. And as much as getting up in front of people terrifies me,
Yeah.
I also secretly love it. And I think I want to do it. I think I want to try to do it. So
Hmm.
that would probably be something that I'm and it's all kind of unfolding too. Like I was asked to speak at this place the other week, and then you're asking me to do this, and it's like you put it out in the universe and be careful what
Oh,
you ask
be
for.
careful what you ask for. Oh my gosh, be careful what you
Yeah,
ask for. Especially like if so there's asking and when asking meets alignment and readiness, boom,
yep,
it's happening. And
yep,
you're like, you're like, hang on a minute, am I ready? But it's just your mind. And then you're like, not today, and like you said, even when you feel that fear and you just do it anyway, you
yep,
know. And you're right. Like it public speaking is it's the most frightening thing. Um, but afterwards it's such an amazing feeling.
yep,
And especially even if one person comes up afterwards and just says, "Oh, I needed to hear all of that. Thank you."
yep.
It's one person in the room.
And it's like the moment I feel the most connected with God or whatever you want to believe. Like I feel the most connected because whatever comes out of my mouth, it's never planned. So
Yeah.
therefore there was no analyzing, there was no second guessing, there was no critiquing it, there was no anything. It's like it is my most free,
Yes.
no choice.
Yes.
And that I love that feeling because it's like, oh my God, I didn't have to make sure this was the best version of myself. Like
Mm-hmm.
crazy. So
Just channeling, just letting go and letting God speak for you. Do you pray before?
oh God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I beg.
Like on your
I
knees?
don't know if it's prayer. I'm just like,
Yeah.
God, please don't let me puke or poop.
Right.
Like, you know, please, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
please. I always say, like, whatever's supposed to come out, let it come out. And like when I watched, it took me a while to watch the recording of myself on
Yeah.
stage because I was scared of what I was going to look like. But when I watched it, I was like, I don't remember saying any of that. I
Yeah.
don't remember saying any of it. And
Yeah.
but the overwhelming need that people needed to hear what I had to say. And that has
Mm.
nothing to do with me. That's not
Right.
about me because I
Right.
remember what I said.
Right.
That was all like, wow, I was put on that stage in that moment for a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, as I am out and about and, I'm networking and have a few different people that I'm really excited to bring on the show, um, I may have to introduce you to some folks
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think, would be, really interesting for you to
Yeah.
meet. And so we're going to wrap up, which I know we could talk for hours, but tell our listeners where they can find you, how they can follow you,
Yeah.
they can connect with you, and I guess in what ways?
Yeah. Instagram is my biggest thing. I do a little Facebook, but not enough to matter. So
Yeah.
Instagram, my handle's Katie from the inside out. that's the best thing. And then you can connect with me that way, and then we can connect, further. I'm not gonna put my phone number up here. Sorry.
Yeah,
Um,
no, that's fine. That's fine.
yeah, and then I live in Wake Forest, North Carolina, so or Raleigh area. People know that more, and yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are, Katie, I just want to say, like, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You've dropped so much wisdom. Your story is incredible. You're a comeback queen. And I'm just, I know there'll be lots of people out there that will hear this and just be, get some hope and probably a lot of liberation. Because I feel like if I had to sum up a gift of yours, just one of them, it would be how liberating you are. You really are. It makes me a bit emotional. So we'll wrap up there. Please do follow Katie from the Inside Out.
Mhm.
Yep, on Instagram, and there'll be information of how to follow Katie in the show notes. And we just thank you, Katie,
Thank-
and we appreciate you.
Absolutely. Have the best day.
Thanks, babe. Bye. Bye.